find it interesting. As a child, my dad bought a 100-year-old Colonial, and I lived through gutting it down to studs and putting it entirely back together. I re-roofed that building. We did all the electric. We were in the house about 18 months. We got doors for Christmas, so we didn't have doors in our bedroom.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast, a regular discussion with building industry professionals. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. This is the second part of my two-part interview with Dyami Plotke, Senior Project Manager for Roof Services on Long Island, New York. You can hear the first part in episode 290. You can find the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast and the original Fine Homebuilding podcast at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. You can leave feedback and ask questions there too. You've sent me photos of your spray rack that you use for testing or looking for leaks, and it's a pretty cool setup. It looks like you made it in your garage. Can you tell me how it works and the genesis of it? Why did you need this?
Absolutely. Well, an experienced roofer will be able to find most leaks by doing an investigation. And leak investigation
by looking at things.
By looking at things, exactly. By doing a visual examination. They always begin by you look inside, see where it's leaking, and then go up to the roof and find the corresponding spot and figure out how it's traveling. But there are times when a visual examination doesn't reveal enough or anything at all. So historically, we've always done water tests, which can be as simple as taking a hose up and spraying different components of the building to see which one is actually letting the water in. But water tests are easy to talk about and a little difficult to do because if you just go up there and spray, with a fire hose jet nozzle and you're willy-nilly spraying everything, you might make it leak, but you don't know what leaked because you've sprayed the roof and the window and the chimney. Whereas when you're careful and you spray just the roof first, and then you move up a little bit and you spray just the windowsill, and then you spray just the window, and then you spray the siding, and then you move up and spray the chimney, you always want to do your testing in the opposite order as the way the water flows. Because if I spray the chimney, everything underneath it gets wet. If I spray the roof, the window above it doesn't get wet. So this way we can determine which of these different components is the point of water entry. And the way we run it as a standard, we test each of those components for 20 minutes or until you have water entry. Sometimes we'll take the 20 minutes a little longer depending on special circumstances, but as a general rule, we do 20 minutes. And that's based on the National Roofing Contractors Association suggestions about water tests. So if you've ever stood on a ladder or on a shingle roof or on a flat roof and tried to aim a hose consistently at one thing for 20 minutes, it's almost impossible. And that was the genesis for creating the spray rig we have. I was up on a roof doing a test and said there has to be a better way, and made the rig. So the rig that we've built, it's essentially the size of a large suitcase, and it's a wooden box and it folds up. And when it's unfolded, there's two articulating arms, and they're done just with nested bolts and screw and knobs, so we can adjust the arms, and they hold just a $10 fan nozzle type garden hose nozzle. Because when you're doing a water test, within reason, you want to recreate the rain as best you can. And I can take a fire hose and spray it up and under things and into things and make leaks occur.
You can make things leak.
Exactly. Right. That never occur in real life. And there is no test that is as good as nature. But the fan style spray is what we found to be the most consistent, and it lets water run over things without forcing and blasting them with the water. So the rig holds the nozzle and you aim it at a certain component, turn the water on. You usually have a second person inside watching for the leak. You wait 20 minutes and you move up to the next thing. So that's the way we do our water testing.
And so is that part of a service for clients, or is it part of diagnosing problems so you know how to do it? I mean, can you charge people for this, I guess is my question in a roundabout way.
We can and try to. We don't charge them when we installed the roof and the leak didn't go away. And maybe it's the roof, maybe it's the wall we didn't touch, but we need to figure it out. In that case, it's a forensic tool for our benefit and the customer's benefit also. But a case like that where we're involved in it, it's not something that we charge for. Or sometimes in those things, I'll say, well, if the test shows that it's my roof, you don't pay for anything. If the test shows it's the wall, here's the bill for the test. But where we do a lot of it is conflict resolution. I'll step onto a property where I've got an AC contractor and a roofer arguing over who's got the leak. And the building owner brings us in as consultants and says, figure it out. And we charge the building owner for the testing and for a report. And at the end of the day, they know, well, we showed the roof is watertight. It is from the AC unit, or vice versa, or whatever it is. So it's a tool in that regard. And that's where we charge for it. We also do sometimes for our own customers. We'll tell them, look, we can't figure out the source of the leak based on the visual examination. There's too many things going on, or everything looks good. And in those cases, while consulting is a part of our business, we're contractors first and foremost. So our business really is putting 30 guys on the roof every day. That's our first job. So if it's a job where once we do the test and we figure out what's the cause of the leak, then we're going to develop a scope of work to make repairs. What I'll often do in those situations is I will either discount or completely rebate the cost of the test against the work that is developed from it. So if we figure out that the wall needs to be reflashed and I give them a price for the wall flashing, I'll deduct either half or the full price of the testing from that.
That seems fair to me. And
we charge for it also because it takes me. I've been on water tests that took me 3 days. The average water test between the time spent in the field and the report is close to or a full day from my time, and usually somebody else's time in the field with me for a few hours. So they're not inexpensive. So an estimate I can do in a couple of hours, and the way the industry is set up, I can't charge for estimates if I want to. This is much more involved than that.
It might have been when we were on that feature article on low slope roofing that you mentioned earlier, but in one of our conversations, you mentioned that OSHA inspectors are currently waiting at roofing supply houses, and they follow the trucks to the projects. Have you had any OSHA visits, and how did it turn out? And have you heard of other roofers who have had OSHA inspections, and how did it turn out for them?
We have. Knock on wood, we've not had an OSHA visit in 5-6 years. It's been a while. That was absolutely true 5-6 years ago of the OSHA inspectors following the deliveries. Since then, we as a company do less shingle roofing. And I think OSHA's backed up a little bit. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think they're not quite as intense on the inspections as they were a few years ago. But yes, we have, and any contractors who've been out there for a while will have one. The most recent ones we've done okay because we do all the protection, and knock on wood, thankfully the fall protection on a steep slope roof, shingle roof slate doesn't really matter. OSHA's perspective is it's steep.
Yeah.
Versus a flat roof are different. There's still very strict fall control stuff for flat roofing, but it's generally a little less intrusive to the work than the steep slope. And the long and short of it is, to really meet OSHA on a steep slope roof, you're wearing a harness. There are very few ways around that. So the vast majority, I'll be honest, we're a contractor. We're not perfect. It's not 100% done in harnesses, but the vast majority of our steep slope stuff is done in harnesses. And we've had, I think the last 2 OSHA visits we had were, we were in harnesses and did not get fined. They'll still pull you aside. They'll give you a lecture. But in our experience, what we've seen is that when they see that you're doing, you're doing your due diligence and you're trying and you're looking to comply, they don't get too punitive with you. But when you're obviously not trying and then you get disruptive with them, they can become incredibly punitive. So I've known contractors who have gotten, tens and tens of thousands of dollars of fines from OSHA. I've known guys who have strategies of, you go down to the OSHA office, bring, in the world of residential, it's a lot of mom and pop shops. So this was always bring your daughter or your wife or somebody, because they play on the emotions of the guy. And the strategy I've heard by many contractors is bring your wife and let her cry. And I feel sexist saying that, but that is what people did, because it was really, you can't take them to court and argue it. They're issuing you the fine, so you have to play on their mercy and look to alleviate it as best you can. So those are strategies I've heard. Thankfully, we've not been in that situation. And when we've gotten fined years in the past, they weren't they weren't so bad that we couldn't just pay and move on.
I
And we've learned our lessons as we've
I can
grown.
imagine that if you had tens of thousands of dollars of fine, that could easily put you out of business. Am I
Easily.
right? Yeah.
Easily. Thankfully, we were a large commercial firm, and we could weather that at least once fines of that size. But it'd be incredibly hard.
Devastating. Yeah.
Exactly, it'd be very hard for us, and we could survive. If it's a small residential contractor where they're only doing a couple $1 million a year, it could easily close the doors. Quite frankly, I could point to competitors who have closed their doors and reopened and closed their doors and reopened because of both OSHA and Department of Labor violations. So there's a set of contractors out there who routinely just keep cycling through and don't get those violations and don't address them properly.
How do they stay in business?
I can think of one guy who has had 6 or 7 different names, and you use a PO box, you put it under your name, you put it under your wife's name, put it under your kid's name, and just continually just opening up new corporations and just kind of running from it. It seems to have sorted itself out. That was truer 10 to 15 years ago than it is today. But the long and short of it is the OSHA rules are onerous to follow, but the reality is you have to follow them because the alternative is just disastrous.
Yeah. We can't have people falling off of roofs and getting hurt, right?
No, you can't. It's a terrible story, but I knew a gentleman who was a facilities manager for a college, and he was talking to me about how he had just hired his brother. His brother was a residential roofing contractor in Connecticut, and had a teenager working over the summer, and a piece of debris fell off the roof, killed them. They were on the ground doing cleanup, but not wearing a hard hat, and got hit in the head and shut the business down. And rightly so. You're that negligent. You should face some sort of consequence. But
the stakes are high.
The stakes are very high. Exactly.
Who could argue? If this is a fun question. If money were no object, what kind of roof would you put on your own home?
Okay, Patrick, you've seen my house. My garage. I have a California ranch. My garage is about a 4-pitch, so 4 over 12, and the main A-frame of the house is a 10.5, 11-pitch, so it's very steep. If money were no object, I would put natural Vermont slate on the steep section, and I would put a green roof on the 4-pitch.
Cool.
So that is what I would like to do. But I'm assuming we're going to turn this into what would I actually do?
So, with a more normal budget, what would you want? What would you want?
Yeah. Well, we're facing that scenario right now because you guys experienced Isaias, the tropical storm that went through here about a month ago.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how you say it, but it was, let's call it a windstorm.
Yes, exactly. And my understanding is you've left you guys in Connecticut out there without power for much longer than us. As is typical of my house, I lost power for about 2 hours. Even in Sandy, I lost power for 2 hours. I'd never lose power in my house, knock on wood.
Shut up.
But I hate you because what I did have happen in this storm is I had a 120-foot oak tree fall on my house.
Oh, my God, dude.
And
were you guys in there?
Yes, but by pure dumb luck. The way the storm came through, it rained torrentially for about a half hour, and then the wind picked up, and it was really windy for 3 or 4 hours after the rain. So I was doing an inspection in the rain. I was completely saturated. It was early afternoon. I had to go back to the office, and I had a ton of paperwork to do. So I was like, let me just stop at my house and change into dry clothes before I go back and sit at my desk for hours. So I stopped home. This is, the modern world we're in. I have 2 kids at home doing online learning. So I'm saying hi to them. I get changed. I'm standing in the hallway, just about to leave, saying goodbye to my kids. And we heard the crash and felt the crash. Now, this tree was tremendous. I didn't think it was that tree falling on the house when I felt it. I was shocked by how quiet and, in relative terms, gentle it was in the house. We knew something hit, but it could have been a transformer blowing up a block away, as opposed to this tree hitting directly on my house. But needless to say, that day I did not go back to work. I went up on the roof with some saws, and we brought in a shingle sub that we use, and we got the tree cut back so it was just leaning against the house, and we patched the roof with rubber because that's what we have.
Because that's what you got.
Exactly. That's what we have. So that's where my house stands now. 6 weeks later, something like that, is
Yep.
the tree is off the house, still supported by this A-frame we've built. Getting tree companies in has been impossible. So we still need to get the tree down and out. And we still have to figure out what we're doing with the roof. So the insurance company has said, well, you have 2 layers of 3-tab asphalt. We're going to take it off. We're going to go back with 3-tab asphalt. We're going to put underlayment down. You don't have a drip edge, so we're not putting a drip edge down. And they've done their insurance company thing, and that's what's supposed to be done. My wife and I are discussing what to do. My personal aesthetic, which I've come to realize is not most of my customers, is that on the low slope section, on the 4-pitch, and maybe on the steeper section, but I'm less inclined to do that, I was thinking of putting down at least R30, if not R40 polyisocyanurate, building up a wood nailer on the outside, and then doing EPDM on top of that.
Yeah, do that.
What's that?
Do that.
I think I should, but my wife hasn't come to terms with the aesthetics of it yet. And on the steep section, I may insulate and put down plywood and put down new shingles. I may just replace the shingles. I may just put down a synthetic slate because it installs. Synthetic slate, just an FYI, is about the same cost or more to buy than natural slate, but installs infinitely
Much
faster.
easier, yeah.
So that's why it's a cheaper install cost. So I may do that. I don't know. It's the cobbler's children have no shoes. My roof is watertight now. It's probably spring before I decide any of this. It's not a priority.
So will you do this work yourself, or will you hire a roof service to do it, or will you hire a third party?
Yes. I don't know. The cheapskate in me would like to do it myself. And at some point, I do like doing it myself. But I'm at a point in my life now where I realize that spending every weekend and a couple of work days on it over the span of a season is not necessarily what I want to do. So I don't know. First of all, it depends on what we do. If it's shingles, then no, I'm going to hire the shingle sub we use, and they're going to shingle the house, and we're going to be done. But if we get a little fancier, I don't know. I'll keep you posted on that if you like. But I have to figure out what we're doing, and then we'll figure out how we do it.
I was just on a slate roof install. You got to do that, and I think you should do it.
Well, the problem is
because it's you, not me. That's why I'm saying that.
A slate roof would be. We literally just we're just signing contracts, I think, next week on a slate roof on a mausoleum, and it's going to be a neat project. It's real. It's a fake slate, but it looks real. But anyway, that'll be a fun project. So yes, I think slate is lovely, and I would love to do slate, but it is slower than dirt to install.
Oh my God, I know it.
And it requires a level of skill to install it, where if it was slate, I would be doing it because I can't afford the people who are skilled enough to do it. And I would have to run down and buy all the slate. Right now, sitting in my backyard are 4 skids of synthetic slate that I was going to use to roof a garden shed that's half finished that I stopped building because of this tree incident. I have to do some math, but I probably have, if I did just that front face of the house, I probably have 70 to 80% of the fake slate I need to do it already sitting in my yard. So maybe it would be, I don't know. It's like, this is not a good answer for your podcast question, but the reality is I don't know what I'm doing yet.
Well, I'll tell you what. So you let me know when it's the day to come put your slate roof on, and I will give you a day or more of labor. How's that?
You got it.
Can you tell me more about your house? Do you have any other new or lingering problems that you're either happily or unhappily ignoring at this point in your life?
Sure. Patrick, you and I know each other because I have been a reader of Fine Homebuilding, well, Fine Woodworking too, but Fine Homebuilding from your part for 25 years. And I find it interesting. As a child, my dad bought a 100-year-old colonial, and I lived through gutting it down to studs and putting it entirely back together. I re-roofed that building. We did all the electric. We were in the house about 18 months. We got doors for Christmas, so we didn't have doors in our bedrooms. So it's all kind of in my bones, and I know how to do most of it. And I walk into most residential homes, and I hear people talk about how wonderful this thing they just had done was. And to my snooty eye, I'm like, no, I don't like that. So because I'm a snob and homework is expensive, that has led me to do much of the work myself.
Sure.
And I'm very happy with the projects that I have done. But my wife will attest to there are far more projects that I've started and not finished, or not even started, than actually finished. So in terms of stuff on the house now, in my bathroom, my kitchen, we had one fluorescent light fixture, which broke. The ballast went. So we
Was
took it
this
out.
something from the 70s or 60s with
It was
huge 4-foot tubes?
It was probably from the 80s,
Uh-huh.
but it pre-existed us in the house.
Yep.
So when it died, we took it out, and the plan is to put 6 hi-hats in the kitchen. But I also want to insulate the ceiling above the kitchen and soundproof the ceiling above the kitchen. So in my attic right now, I've ripped up the attic floor above the kitchen. I've not ripped out the old insulation yet. I have to put all the new insulation in. I have a box with 6 hi-hats and all the wiring up in the attic. I still have to put all that in. And I have, the $35, $40 pull string ceiling light fixture, the cheapest one you can get from the box store. That's what's in my kitchen now, and has been in the kitchen for about 4 years now. But you get, you guys have a house. You get an issue where you reach a point where it's functional.
Yeah, it's stabilized,
and that
right?
removes all the drive to go the extra effort and do what you really want. Another project we have is I need a new water heater. I live at a dead end. I can't get gas, so I have an oil furnace and an oil hot water heater, and they're separate units. I don't draw hot water off the furnace. And the heat exchange is going, and there's some redundancy in the tanks that has failed. I'm not technical enough to do it. Plumbing is one thing I stay away from myself. But I know that any day now, the water heater is going to go and it's going to leak all over my finished basement. And I've known that since like February.
So you're a smart guy. What's the plan for replacing an oil-fired water heater, right? That's a big decision.
I've read too much Fine Homebuilding.
I bet you have.
So my plan, given that I can't get gas, I already have oil. I don't want to bring in propane for it. And I don't personally believe, based on the stuff I know, that the electric-fired on-demand heaters can accommodate the water demands of my house.
You don't have enough electricity to make that work, brother.
Exactly. And I have 3 teenage boys, so it's not working. So while I have heard good plumbers advise against this, and I think that it will lead to much longer cycle times than I currently get, because my house has many issues, but a lack of hot water is not one of them. And I think it might lead to cycle issues. But what I'm really leaning towards is an air
heat pump water heater.
And to do that, I need to run some electric in there, but that's not easy. Not that hard to do. And so that's what I think I'm leaning towards. But that's not inexpensive.
No, it's not.
It's like 4 times the cost of a new oil-fired water heater installed. And it's going to take longer to fill the tank, which ultimately may prove a little bit of an issue. But I don't want oil. I have a bias against oil. I almost walked away from our house. We were in contract when I realized we couldn't get gas because we're in a dead end. Gas is in the neighborhood, but it's 4 houses away, and they wanted, 12 years ago, they wanted $70,000 to run it to my house.
You can buy a lot of any kind of other fuel for $70K,
exactly.
Man. Yeah.
And what I have is I have a mediocre water heater, which is at the end of its life, but I have what in 1985 was an absolute top of the line premium oil heater, oil furnace. I've been in the house 14 years. Between the 2 of them, I've spent about $1,000 on repairs, and $600 of that was in the spring because my water heater died and had to be repaired and temped up. So until it really dies, I have not been motivated to do anything. But when it dies, I know what I want, and I want the heat pump for the hot water. And what I want to do is when the furnace goes, I'm going to go to split units and use them as heat pumps and do the heating and air conditioning right through the split unit, and probably be a little cold on those days when it's 18 degrees out, but just say, screw it. That's what I'm doing, and not go with a redundant system and not have oil. That's what I've made my mind up. I don't know if I can afford that, but that's, a little bit of knowledge can be a dangerous thing.
Oh, gosh, yeah. So you explained what amounts to an all-electric house when you're done. Have you thought about the PV panels as part of your roofing project?
Okay.
I mean,
as a roofer, I have no issue with PV panels. I think they're a wonderful thing. I think they need to be installed properly so they don't cause a problem, but that can be done, and I think they're a wonderful thing. However, and you can attest this, Patrick, my house has roughly 120 trees on a half-acre lot. It took my wife and I about 6 months of living in the house to realize why we picked this house. But we picked it because it's covered by trees. In the summertime, my driveway gets about 3 hours of direct light a day. So I have always dismissed PV out of hand because I am not willing to cut down trees to make it work.
Yeah.
However, this storm 6 weeks ago took down one of the big trees that was stopping it from working. So I probably still have too much tree cover to do it. But talk to me in a couple months, or maybe next summer when I've gone through the summer without this tree. It may be a little bit of a different story. And putting the tree stuff aside, I would absolutely put the solar panels on. And I'm going with a PV with an electric house, not necessarily because I think PV is the best way. It's a very good way, but natural gas is very good also. But I can't get natural gas, and I don't want oil, so that really leaves me with
few options.
Few options, exactly.
It's been a pleasure talking to you, Dyami, as always. Is there anything you want to tell or ask the audience?
Well, I would just offer that I like talking about this stuff, as you can tell. I will go into dramatic detailing of the roofing stuff, and I have a lot of people I know in far off places where I'm more than happy to just help with them. And if you're redoing a house or something, you have a question, it's not a big deal for me to just take a look at what you have and answer a couple questions. Typically, you have to pay me to fly out to you, but beyond that, I'm happy to help. So the easiest place for people to look me up if they want to is to check me out on LinkedIn. It's Dyami, Dyami Plotke, Plotke, and I have a pretty big presence on LinkedIn, and I'm always posting roofing-related stuff there. So if you have a question about roofing, you can absolutely hit me up there.
And you can write to the podcast too. I bet you've answered several questions for us, maybe a half dozen on roofing related topics.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Absolutely. If you'd like your question to be shared on air and hear a bunch of really well-meaning people who don't know that much about roofing answer it, send it into the podcast, and then I'll help them out too.
And I'm so grateful for that. I really am. Dyami, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to Fine Homebuilding at fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Stay safe, everybody. Thanks very much for listening. Dyami, thanks again, man.
No problem. Thank you guys for having me on, and to everybody out there, keep wearing your mask.